Hey, Miranda, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
Awesome. We have a guest as well.
Yes, say hi.
This is awesome. This is our first baby present for video interview. We've definitely had them in the background before on the podcast, but for those who are listening to this on the podcast, we also are doing our interviews on video, in video format on our YouTube channel, so you can go check it out there and you can see this delicious ball of squish that I'm looking at right now across the screen. It's such an added bonus to the video component. It's so great.
Yeah, she doesn't miss a meal, so that's for sure.
That's great. I love it. My kind of girl. Can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Yeah, so my husband and I are from Michigan, and that's where we're living now, but we lived in Georgia the last 4 years. I was going to chiropractic school, and he was just working. He's a retail manager, so we were down there, and then actually got pregnant my last year, and it just so happened to work out that I would graduate in December and I was due the very beginning of January. So we graduated, packed up, moved here, and had a baby. So it was kind of a whirlwind for a minute. Yeah. It all worked out really, really great, but like perfect timing.
Mm-hmm. That's
but
great.
It was definitely busy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and it's not like it stops being busy necessarily. Like you kind of have your hands full, literally and figuratively.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. But my maternity leave was kind of like built in. So I didn't have to start till I was ready, which was great.
That's beautiful. That's awesome. So let's go back a little bit then to before baby arrived and kind of how and why home birth for you.
Yeah. So, especially in chiropractic school, that's a little bit more the norm, which is great, but I'm actually kind of terrified of hospitals in general and just medical professionals sometimes, which is kind of horrible, but you know how it goes, just you hear horror stories. And so home birth was always the plan, even before we got pregnant, which made it really easy. And my husband is actually what got me into chiropractic school in general.
Really?
So he was on board from day one. So I didn't have to have any weird conversations or convincing to do. Mm-hmm. It was all really easy.
Yeah. No slideshow presentations and
yes. No presentations, no nothing. Just he was on board from the beginning. So that was great.
And so what about extended friends and family? Were they on board too, or were there any conversations there?
Yeah. So pretty much everybody that knows me knows that I was going to do a home birth. I'm pretty much known for my natural crunchy tendencies, you know. My mom was like a little hesitant about it, but she knew that she wouldn't be able to stop me either. So she was supportive, but nervous.
Okay.
Just because she doesn't fully know the scope that midwives have and the ability that, you know, all the stuff that they carry for emergency situations and that kind of a thing. So she was nervous. And the more we talked about it, the better it became for her, the easier it was. Mm-hmm. But she kind of lived in the era like, why wouldn't you go to the hospital? It's like paid for, which it's not today, usually, you know? Yeah,
that is an interesting element.
Yeah. My friend, I think her hospital birth ended up being like $10,000 after insurance. So it's typically a lot more than home birth is anyways. So that wasn't really an issue for us.
That's interesting. Yeah, that was the case for us too, that home birth was absolutely more economical. And, you know, that's not usually how it is. Normally it's like you get what you pay for in terms of you pay more, it's a better experience. But in terms of maternal health care, especially in this country, that's not really the path that it follows. It can actually be quite the opposite, that the cheaper option is actually where you get the best care, depending on how you go about it.
Yeah. Yep. And that's totally how it was for us. So that wasn't even a concern, which was good. But my mom definitely thought it was. But she was pretty supportive.
That's great. And I think what the way that you described her, like supportive but nervous, I think that's how you put it, or you know, something very close to that effect. I think that describes a lot of people who especially aren't familiar with home birth. You know, there's that, I want to support you, I love you, and I'm also like,
Yep. That was exactly how it was. So but she was great the whole time. Part of me wanted her there for like a split second. And then I was like, no, don't need any kind of doubt in the room.
That's a great point to make. And I'm glad you bring that up, because that's something that's very real for home birthing parents. You know, when you do have now the freedom, so to speak, to select who's in the room, you know, that doesn't mean then everyone come to the room, especially, you know, even if you are supportive, but you have that reticence or you have that sort of nervous energy about you, that's absolutely something that can transfer and transmute to mom, to whomever else in the room, and it can have impact.
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And it was crowded enough, I feel.
Oh, really?
Did you? Just my husband and the midwife team. So that was good.
Yeah,
That was good.
What were some of your intentions for your birth, or what were some of the things going into it that you either knew you definitely wanted or definitely didn't want? How was that process for you?
I tried to really just go with the flow for things, because I've never given birth before. So I knew that I would kind of just be figuring it out as I go. I did do a lot of research and a lot of reading and all of that to kind of prepare myself, but nothing like fully prepares you until you're
That's a great point.
In the moment. But so I really didn't have too many plans. I just knew I wanted my husband to be present and kind of supporting me through the contractions, however felt good in the moment. But I didn't really have too much pressure on anything. Like, people would always ask me, like, which is really strange, like, what position do you want to be in when you give birth? And I was like, I don't know, like, whatever feels good, I guess. Like,
the one that gets the baby out.
Yeah, like, I have no idea. So that was a weird question I got a lot, which I didn't expect.
Yeah. Okay. Were there any resources or things that helped you in whatever sort of preparation you did do?
Yeah, I found the most helpful was just listening to other people's experiences, because you got so many different viewpoints.
Yeah.
So towards the end of my pregnancy, I listened to a podcast like a day while I was getting ready, which was great, or while I was walking or doing whatever. I did do a lot of research. I read the book, The Bradley Method, things like that. Other books that I'm blanking on at the moment, but just any pregnancy, birth type books, but listening to other people was probably the most helpful for me.
Gotcha. And how were you feeling in general, physically, and how did you kind of move through your pregnancy?
Yeah, well, it's funny, because as a chiropractor, I was like, oh, I'm going to be so healthy throughout the whole thing, which I was. I have to give myself a little bit of slack, but I was like, I won't be nauseous at all. I'm just going to like cruise through working out the whole time. My body had other plans, and I was able to work out a good part of it, but I was super nauseous in the beginning, super tired. It just kind of hits you like a ton of bricks. So I just had to really give myself grace and just, eat what I could get down. And then just work out. My workouts changed a lot and this was like right when COVID was happening. So gyms were closing down. So I had to switch to home workouts, which is fine and was good, better than nothing, but it's just a different atmosphere, different type of training. So that kind of took a hit. And then just throughout my pregnancy, I'm only 5 foot. So I feel like there was just nowhere for the baby to go at all. So I was just super uncomfortable, which I feel like everybody is towards the end, but I just was like, I did not expect to feel this uncomfortable towards the end. Just a lot of like heaviness, pubic bone pain, nothing too crazy. I'm thankful I still was able to, walk and move around and do that kind of a thing, but it's definitely a different experience when you go through it yourself.
Yeah, yes. And I can relate to that feeling of, how is there going to be any more space in this body? My skin can't stretch anymore. My organs can't shift around anymore. What?
Yes.
So I can very much relate
you have like
to that.
feet up in your ribs, like a head down, like smacking your pubic bone. It was a struggle.
Yeah, I get it. So
like an ice pack on your
anywhere.
Pad, like just all the things. 17 pillows to sleep. So it was a mess.
Okay. And how was Cameron in his preparation, or, any conversations that you had about birth and beyond? That's great that he was on board and supportive, but I'm kind of thinking for Matthew, who's usually here asking about the partner's perspective. I need to make sure I do that so that we have that on record.
Oh yeah. I know he would normally ask.
Yeah.
I remember. He was great. He's like the most supportive in general, but he was really, really great throughout the pregnancy, just helping me with whatever I needed. I had to take a lot more naps, and just like, especially if I was done working, he kind of just took over and let me, take a bath, just relax, rubbed my shoulders like every night. And he hates doing that because his fingers cramp up. So he was a real MVP on that one. But he was really, really great. And he actually read, I think it was Husband Coach Childbirth is the book that he read. And he hates reading. So that really showed how much he loved me. So he read that to kind of prepare, and just, he did listen to some of the podcasts with me. Like if we were driving, we actually had to drive from Georgia to Michigan when I was 37 weeks. So you can imagine how crazy that was.
Yeah.
But so he listened to some of the podcasts too, which was cool.
That's great. I love that. That's helpful.
And he was really, really great during the birth. Pretty much whatever I wanted, he was there. So that was great.
Ooh, okay. I'm excited to hear about that. Let's take a quick break then. And when we come back, we'll talk about the birth itself.
Sounds good.
Okay. So let's talk about birthing time. How did it start? What was going on?
Yeah. So the last couple weeks of my pregnancy, I was having a lot of braxton-hicks, prodromal labor, all of that really fun stuff. So every sensation, I was like, oh, is this it? And it wasn't, but, it was the day of my due date, and I had tried to prepare myself that I'm probably going to go to 42 weeks. That's totally normal. It's my first baby. That's fine. Even though I was a little bit dying inside, because I'm oh, I don't know if I can do this for 2 more weeks, even though now it seems like such a short time. When you're that pregnant, it seems like a whole year.
Yeah.
But so the day of my due date, we were getting the birth tub set up. That was kind of a last minute decision for me. I was I kind of want to have the option of a birth tub. So we got one, and we were setting it up. So my husband was doing that, and we kind of just spent the day relaxing. And we had a problem with the electricity in our nursery. So the lights weren't turning on, and we were well, whatever, I guess it'll be fine. It is what it is. Well, we had a friend of a friend offer to come look at it, who was an electrician, because he's I want you to have light when the baby comes, because it was January at this time. It got dark at 5 p.m. So it was hard to see. So he came over at 7:30 on a Sunday to look at the electricity. And my husband was in there with them. I was in the bedroom with the dogs because they're crazy. And just bouncing on my ball, drinking all the red raspberry leaf tea that I could fit into my body. And I started having braxton-hicks, but they were uncomfortable. They felt like period cramps. And I was okay, this is different, but I just figured I was uncomfortable. And they started coming more regularly. So I pulled out my contraction timer and was I can actually time these. I've never been able to time a braxton-hicks before. They kind of just come and go, and it wasn't timeable. So I was okay, that's kind of weird. And the electrician was here for 2 hours, and he fixed the lighting in the bedroom somehow. And I kind of think that's what kind of triggered everything, because I'm okay, everything's done now. I can have a baby. Even though that's silly, I feel that's kind of what really pushed me along.
I love it. I think baby knows, or your body knows. And that was going to be your nest. It's the nursery. It's not it's the guest bathroom or something. So,
right.
I think it totally makes sense. And I think someone right now is listening. Maybe there's some lingering thing, or there's this thing to yet be completed, or there's a date of something, and it's going to be that. And they're going to think back to listening to this oh my gosh, it was that. It was, the work project being complete, or the thing in the house. For us, it was a concert, we went to a concert, and then that night I went into labor, and I was so nervous. Are we going to be able to make it to this thing? So I think it makes total sense.
Yeah. And I think it happened with you too. You kind of started contracting during the concert, right?
Oh, yeah, during the Star Wars theme song, which, that's going to go down in the books forever. Matthew attributes that to the real start of labor, the real induction.
Yes.
So,
yes, I love it. It's just those mental blocks that can keep you from labor starting, which is so crazy. Mm-hmm. So my husband, he finally left and I was like not saying anything. And then my husband came out and we were sitting in the kitchen and I was like, I'm having these feelings. I don't know what is happening, but they're kind of uncomfortable and I can time them. And he's like, well, what does that mean? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I have no idea. He's like, well, what should we do? Should we call the midwife? And I was like, no, like I've had these contractions like ish for a while. I don't think anything is going to happen. Like I'll probably go to bed and it'll be fine. Well, my husband worked, he had a truck shift the next morning. So he had to be up at like 2:30 and it was already late that day. And he's like, well, should I at least tell work just in case? And I was like, I guess you can, but I was like, I don't want to jinx it though, because I really do want to have the baby. But I was like, yeah, go ahead just in case. Because someone had to go in for him at 2. And it's one of our really good friends. So he texted him and they were like, oh, okay, like good luck. And we were like, it probably won't happen. So we ended up just going to bed, or we ate a snack and then just kind of went to bed. And as soon as I laid down, contractions just stopped. And I was like, kind of disappointed, but I was also like, I don't really want, like, I've been up all day. I don't really want to labor all night because I'd be really tired. And I ended up waking up. I went to sleep fine, which was great. And I ended up waking up at 1:30 in the morning. And the same contractions kind of started again. So I had a couple in bed and I was like, all right, I think I got to get up. Like my husband's alarm was about to go off. So as soon as that went off, I was like, yeah, you need to tell them that for sure you're not going into work because these are like, they keep coming. And so we did. So I ended up getting up. I got in the shower because I was like, I'm going to want to just get in the shower, like feel fresh for later. And he made breakfast, which he can't skip a meal very easily. So he's like, I'm going to make breakfast while you're in the shower in case like I won't get to eat for a while. And I was like, okay, that's a good plan. So I got in the shower and things were still pretty regular. It didn't like really change anything. So I know sometimes the shower can slow things down or speed things up even. It was pretty much the same. So I was in there for, I don't even know how long. And then I got out. I tried getting in the birth. Oh, I know. That's pretty much how I sounded too. Yeah. I got out and then I just labored on my ball in the birth tub. And looking back, it's so funny because the first time I told the story, I looked like I was like, oh yeah, it was like 5 a.m. at this point. But my sense of time was like non-existent. Like I had to go back and piece together the text to my midwife to really be like, okay, this is when this happened. But you just go into a different world. So we did text her and let her know what was going on. I think once I got out of the shower, that first time I was like, I'm having all these contractions. And she's like, okay, like, have you had your bloody show yet? Which I didn't. She's like, did your water break? Which it didn't. And so she was like, okay, just keep me posted. And I was like, okay, like, are you going to come over though? Like, what are we doing here? And she's like, no, like, you're good. Just continue to labor. And I was like, okay. So I just laid on my ball. I tried to have like calming music playing, but I also like didn't hear any of it, which is funny. And my husband just put pressure on my sacrum, kind of rubbed my back. You want to play with your toy? And we kind of just did that for a long time. And I just don't even know how long. I think it was a couple hours. And I would lean over the counter and he would put pressure on my back. I tried getting into the birth tub and quickly realized, and he was like frantically trying to keep it warm too, which was funny. Like in between contractions, he would like run to the stove and like try and boil water and pour it in. Bless him. But I ended up hating it. Okay. Spoiler alert. I hated it. It was like huge and he couldn't, unless he got in with me, which I guess he could have, but we didn't think about it at the time. But he couldn't really reach me in it. Like it was hard for him to really do the counter pressure on my back. So I didn't love it. I tried it 2 times while I was in labor, and both times I was like, no, I can't be in this. So my poor husband was frantically trying to fill this thing up. Maybe if I had a smaller one, like I know they have a mini version, and I feel like that would have been perfect, but it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
I thought I would love it, but it wasn't happening how I wanted it to. So, eventually a couple hours passed, and I did end up having my bloody show, but it didn't really I don't know. It was like not as dramatic as I thought it would be, I guess. Like it was just like, oh, okay, that's there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, cool. My water still hadn't broken or anything, but I remember that the contractions were so close together. And I thought that you would get like a good break in between contractions. And I just wasn't having that. Like, they were really strong and then like still really painful, but like not as strong. Like it went from like an 8 to a 10. And I was like, what is happening? Like, I am dying, but I wasn't. It was fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, that was an expectation I had that wasn't accurate for me. And I don't know if it was the position she was in. I had all back labor, which she was in a good position, head down, like not sunny side up. Like, so I don't know. I didn't expect that. And my midwife, when she got there, she's like, well, you have a baby, like coming out of your body. So your back's gonna hurt. And I was like, yeah, okay, I guess that makes sense. So I just was like, I didn't expect it. I thought it all would be in my belly, but it wasn't. It was all on my back, which was fun. So after laboring for a while, my husband took over texting the midwife because I wasn't able to anymore. And she eventually came over. And at this point I had moved into the bed and I was kind of leaning over our headboard. So that was the moment I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Like nothing was helping the pain. I kept like trying to get into a different position and nothing was helping. And in my mind, I was like, okay, this is what everybody says transition is. But I didn't want to believe that it was, because at this point I was like, I haven't been in labor that long. Like, there's no way. Like, I probably am only like a centimeter or 2 dilated. Like, there's no way. Well, she got there and she's like, she took one look at me and was like, yeah, she's definitely transitioning. She was telling this to my husband and she's like, do you want me to check you? Like, I don't have to, no pressure. And I was like, I don't know, because I don't want to be only a couple centimeters and then feel super discouraged.
Yeah.
But I was like, she was like, no, I think you're like pretty far along. And she's like, but I don't have to check you. And I was like, okay, no, you can. And so she did. And I was like an 8 already, which I was really surprised about. And then another expectation I had was that when you transition, I was like, oh, I'll be pushing like in 5 minutes. And that's not always the case again. It took longer to get to that point after that. I was like, oh, I'll be pushing really soon. And it still took a little bit of time, a couple hours to get really to full dilated and ready to push. So that expectation had to change a little bit also. So we kept laboring. She really helped me get into different positions. I tried laying on my sides. Nothing really helped though. Like, you think you would find a position that like feels good, but I think there's just a couple that are like less uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
We're trying to tell the story. So I got one on my side and I sat on the birth stool for a while. That's, I think, where it really intensified things. And I ended up like falling asleep in the birth stool.
Oh, wow.
For like 20 minutes. And my husband is like, what is happening? And my midwife was like, I think her body's just getting ready to have a baby and is just letting her rest for a second. And that was like the best thing for me. It felt like 5 minutes, but it was like 20 minutes of silence. And then after that, she asked if I wanted her to check me again, and she did. And I was a 10. And she was like, I am not going to tell you to push. She was like, you can push if you feel like it, but I won't tell you or count or do anything like that. Like, you do what you want. And I was like, well, I want this baby out of me like right now. So I'm going to push. And looking back, I think with my next baby, or if we have a next baby or whatever, I would wait a little bit longer to try and wait for that fetal ejection reflex to kick in, because I think I was pushing just to get the baby out when I wasn't really ready. And it was hard to kind of find the muscles to do that.
Yeah.
Like, you think of pushing and sometimes it seems easy. Like, oh yeah, you just like bear down. But I was like, I don't even, like, I can't even feel what I'm supposed to be pushing. So that was kind of a learning curve
totally
for me. And especially, I mean, I worked out a lot prior to pregnancy. My abs were pretty strong, comparatively. And I was like, oh, it'll be easy. And then I was trying to push and I was like, I don't know where to push. Like, I'm confused. But after a few contractions, you figure it out a little bit, but it was hard. Like, I am jealous of people whose babies just shoot right out of there, but I was like pushing. Like, I felt like I was running a marathon.
I can relate.
But
yeah.
That's and you want the baby out so bad that it's like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. I hear a theme kind of coming along through the story of expectations versus reality.
Yes.
I think that's...
Yes, there was a lot of disconnect. And I don't even think any sort of preparation really could have prepared me, because everybody is so different.
Yeah.
And I've heard stories of people that had things similar to me happen. But it's still like a totally different experience.
Yeah.
When you're going through it yourself. So, I started pushing, trying to figure out that whole thing. And I ended up pushing mainly, on my knees. My husband was sitting on our bed. I was on the floor, kind of leaned over him with my arms kind of wrapped around him for support. And that seemed to work. That felt the most natural to me, I guess. Even though I was really tired, I kind of did want to lay on my back, which I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And I didn't, but I kind of wanted to. I was like, I am so tired. But I didn't. I stayed in that position and my water still hadn't broken. So my midwife was sitting on the ground, like covered in like, those Chuck's pads, like waiting for it to break. Which was funny. And later on, my mom was like, why didn't she just break your water? Like, things would have gone so much faster. And I was like, well, because my water probably wasn't breaking for a reason. Like, we want things to happen as naturally as possible. So it did break eventually. And then, things progressed, but it's like, there's no need to break it early unless there's, some other reason. But for us, we didn't have to. It didn't break until I was pushing.
Okay. Which was
interesting. I kind of expected that to happen early on. And it didn't. Eventually, one push and it just like went everywhere. So I'm sure that was interesting for my husband to watch. He's not much of he hasn't watched any births previously. So this is all new to him, which was fun. But yeah, so my water broke, things kind of picked up. It got a little bit more exciting towards the end. She, did the dance where they like come down, crown, and they kind of go back, come down, and I kept pushing. And my midwife, once I got her out a little bit, she was like, her shoulder had gotten stuck under my pubic bone.
Okay.
And she was like, we need to get her out. Like, so she actually ended up reaching in and kind of helping her shoulder come out, which sounds like that would be the most painful part, but I honestly don't even remember it. Like, it all kind of was a little bit painful at that point. So I don't remember that particular moment being more painful, but I know she did say like, all right, Miranda, like, we have to get the baby out like right now.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was like, you're terrified when someone says that, but you're like, okay, like, we got to get the baby out now. So a couple more pushes, like as strong as I could muster. And baby came out and she was a little white. ish, not getting as much. She passed meconium as she was coming out. We think just her shoulder getting stuck kind of put her into a little bit of distress.
Yeah.
So my midwife had her and was rubbing her down, and she didn't cry like automatically. And my midwife said afterwards, she was like, I was just about to get the resuscitation thing when she just took in a big gulp of air and started crying. And me and my husband started crying, and it was just the best thing. So she got to pass her under my legs to my husband. We got to grab her and kind of give her to me as I kind of slowly flipped over and got to sit with her. So she had a grand entrance to the world that was a little bit more exciting than I would have wanted. But she was totally fine after that and is perfect now. So it was just a crazy, really, really cool experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And I was like, wow, I just pushed a whole human out of my body.
That happened.
Yeah, like, what? And we didn't know, I should have mentioned, we didn't know if she was a boy or a girl.
Okay.
So that was really fun. And I didn't even think about it until I was sitting for a while, and I was like, I got to check, and I was like, oh, she's a girl. And so that was really, really special too. It was really hard to wait, but it was really special.
Yeah. Wow. So what was the energy like in the room? Like, she's here, all is well. She's taking that big gulp of air, the crying, what was everyone doing, and how did it feel, if you can put yourself back in that moment?
It was like the most surreal moment of my entire life. She only cried for a few minutes, and then as soon as I was holding her, she kind of just calmed down and just eyes open, staring at everything, whoa, where am I? And she was just so alert from the beginning, holding her head up, looking at me. And it was just the most amazing thing. My midwife was kind of helping me continue just to rub her down, and just getting that really good skin to skin, and making sure that she was good. But after she breathed for the first time, she was perfect, ready to go. She helped me just try and get her to latch, which that's a whole new expectation versus reality thing too. You're like, oh, it'll come so natural. It'll just be the easiest thing ever. Can you wait?
I'll just entertain her while you talk.
Oh yeah, that works for me. But that was the thing. I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just going to put your face to my boob and hopefully it goes
right.
Hopefully it's just is what it is. I don't know.
Yeah.
But she did. She latched a little bit and just did really great. And then my midwife was like, okay, we're going to give her to dad. And he got to have some skin to skin time, which was great. And then she's like, you have to birth your placenta. And I was like, I'd really rather not do that right now. I don't want to do it. Oh, and her dad cut the cord too, which he was like, I'm not doing that. And he ended up doing it, which he's funny. But so that was really cool too. He got to cut the cord and just cuddle with her, which was really special because you go through 9 months of growing a baby and having her with you everywhere. And this is dad's really first time to get that special bond with her,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a primal, visceral thing that's now kicked in for them. I know they've felt the kicks from the outside, seen the belly grow, but it is a different sort of connection, I would imagine. And I'm sure Matthew would chime in here as well, echoing that it's just, it kind of comes full circle.
Yeah. And I remember my husband, he just kept saying we have a daughter. What just happened? This is insane. Yeah. It's such a crazy moment. Everything changes in a second.
And I feel like
you have this brand new person.
I feel like every moment after that, we're still doing it. We think, what was life like before this? I mean, did we what were we doing with our lives and what was going on? And did we even have a life before this? It's really hard to go back and imagine pre-baby times.
what did I do with a full 8 hours of sleep? Like, I have no right to say I was tired ever.
That's really funny. So it was midwife, husband, you. So that was the...
Yeah, she had a midwife assistant who was also a doula.
Cool.
And she was great to have, and I think they're both lactation certified, but she was great to have there. I remember occasionally I was like, I cannot do this anymore. Like, I can't do it. Which again, I kind of told myself I wasn't going to say that, but it just is what it is. Yep. You just say whatever when you're in birth.
Whatever needs to come out, comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And she was like, you are doing it. Like, she just kept saying, like, you already are doing it.
Yeah. Which
is really, just looking back, really special to me. And she was just such a calm presence. So I was really happy to have her there too, and helping the midwife and helping us, and giving my husband suggestions of things to do. And it was really great. So the team, I couldn't have asked for a better midwife team. Mm-hmm. It just worked out really good. The presence was really great. And in total, I was only in labor for like 8 hours.
Wow.
Which is not very long.
No, it's not, especially for a first-time mom.
Not very long. No. So I was pretty lucky in that respect. I went into labor like in the morning at 1:30 and had her at 9:50.
Yeah.
So it was not very long at all.
Mm-hmm. And then you just got to be home. You didn't have to go anywhere. You didn't have to do anything.
Oh my goodness. I told my husband, I was like, I could not imagine driving somewhere in labor. Like, I think, like, no, I could not do it. Mm-hmm. Like, that would be way too uncomfortable. And then afterwards, just being home, getting to sit on my like rocking chair and just like stay there was amazing.
Yeah, it really is priceless.
Yeah, that was like the best thing ever, not having to move.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Which is great. I know. I don't know how people do this in the hospital. Like, oh goodness. Yeah. So I was really grateful. Everything worked out really great, and that we didn't have to transfer, because props to those people, because that would be hard to have to get in the car and drive somewhere, especially like a long ways away if you're not local to a hospital.
Sure. Well, it really sounds like this was an amazing experience overall. I know there's that expectation versus reality thing that comes up, but I think that's so relatable. And I think that's something that you've alluded to in the conversation, that to an extent, there's no preparation that really prepares you for the experiential aspect of this whole thing. And so I think it's about just being patient with ourselves and accepting, like you said, it is what it is. Like, whatever's going to come out, whatever I'm going to say, whatever's going to feel a certain way that I thought wouldn't, that happens. And I think it's a really great lesson for life too. And for parenthood, good grief, going forward now, I think motherhood has a whole host of expectation versus reality, split screens. And I think, I think it's fitting for a birth to help kind of kick it off and usher us into that whole new phase.
Yes. And I'm glad I did all the research I did. I wouldn't say like, don't do any research, because it doesn't matter. Like, as far as the processes, I knew what was happening and what was to be expected.
Physiologically,
it's so good to hear other people's stories, because when you're in that situation, you're like, oh yeah, I remember, like, she said this and she said this. And so I'm really grateful for the research I did, but it's also like, you have to give yourself grace during it, because you just don't know how it's going to go for you.
Yeah.
Or how it's going to feel. I will say, one thing I kind of wish I did, and I've heard really good things, and I think you guys did it, was the Hypnobabies. I think I would do that next time. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't do any in-person classes either, which I think could be beneficial. Just because of like COVID, they weren't having them, and then we moved, like, it was just crazy. Yeah. So I think that could be helpful for new parents, just because all the techniques I read, because I didn't actively practice them as much as I probably should have, I kind of forgot about, like, throughout the window, or just kind of, just they didn't pop into my head when I was trying to push a baby out of me.
Yeah.
But I have a couple patients who do Hypnobabies and have had pain-free births. And I just think it's really cool. So I probably would do that next time.
Cool. Well, that's good to note. And I'm sure someone right now is, signing up as we speak.
Yeah, right. I know.
That.
I haven't even done it. So take life with a grain of salt. But I know a lot of people really, really like it.
We did it.
I have a lot of patients who have recommended it.
Yeah.
To me.
I did the self-guided and enjoyed it. That's what worked for me. I didn't feel like I needed to do a class or go anywhere or have a direct, practitioner. But so we had the home guided and it was great for us. So I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be super beneficial too.
Thank you so much for hanging out and sharing your story with us. And I love the little bonus of oxytocin boost, getting to see her. I know.
Awesome. Thanks for letting her hang out, little monster.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I will put in the show notes ways for people to connect with you, especially if they're in your area. I'm sure people want to find you, and then to just see what you got putting out there about your birth story, about chiropractic, health, wellness, and beyond. I'd love to point people in your direction. So we'll do that.
I'm a pregnancy and pediatric chiropractor. That's like my specialty. So
beautiful. I
am excited to kind of share the podcast, which I already do, but being on it is pretty cool too. So I'll share that with them. And if anyone from Michigan wants to get a hold of me, feel free.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Miranda.
Bye. Can you wave?